done a bunch of candidates. Some of them dropped out. The common panelists. That was the thing too. Kind of I'm not 18 yet.
That's the thing. I didn't know it was like. I didn't know if it was.
I'm still flying in.
So I'm gonna jump in, but I don't want to jump in because like it's like.
Yeah, it's all about finding out there's little differences. You never know. It's usually like he has a Q&A session with the crowd after each event. That's usually what he does. So that's kind of something to look out for. You never know what people are going to ask. You never know what they're going to ask.
Right. Yeah. I bet it gets competitive. I mean, we've only been here for 3 days, and we've only seen a few candidates so far. But I can imagine going to those over and over again. I mean, it's the first speeches. So, yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's so great to meet you.
Yeah, it's good to meet you.
Also, do you have any press credentials?
No.
Okay.
I wish.
You should wear some of your own, and then also take a sticker off because then other reporters are going to think that you're a UX supporter,
Right.
and then we'll try and interview you, and then you'll be like, no, I'm not.
I know. I've already had that. They're like, "Are you gonna caucus?" I'm like, "I'm from out of state." I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
So you don't have any like land use in school or anything like that?
That's
I know. I should put mine on.
I do at home. I didn't think to bring it here. It's like, oh, I'm a political scientist. I'm not a journalist, but I'm researching journalists, so it's kind of weird.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, that's probably fine then. It was just like that's something that I would do if I were you. Like, to go around these events to be kind of like a nonpartisan observer.
Yeah, I think we should probably take the stickers out. It's so we get the stickers and we're like, oh, it's the fun, and we get excited.
I should be collecting like this.
Some
of the embeds do. I know Kelly Harris like collects a lot of memorabilia. I mean, that's a good point, but like, I save all my collections.
Yeah, I think
like tons and tons of like lanyards, plastic
Yeah, I should look into that. We collected peat signs yesterday at the rally. We have like a few stack of them.
Nice.
We got buttons.
Keep the history, man. Maybe one day you'll own an LE shop or something.
Yeah, you put the little lawn signs in the scrapbook, the ones that are this big.
Do you even gram?
Really, you make a nice color.
Armando, right?
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah. Come up
really
here
great.
when you gaggle.
Okay.
Say something.
Yeah, because then you can ask a question.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, no worries. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, definitely.
Guys, let me know if you want me to zoom in more on the PowerPoint. head count, there's at least over 100 people in here right now. Okay. Crowd shot? Well, that's gonna mess up my zoom.
Hi everybody, how are you guys?
Disney World.
So excited to see all you guys for MGA. My name's Lauren, I'm here from Los Angeles, California. I swapped the sunshine for the snow because I know how important it is to be here. About 5 years ago, I started working for a wildly successful tech startup, and 6 months ago, my job was automated. After doing some research and learning about automation and Andrew Yang, I realized how important it was to jump on and join this campaign. Which is why I'm urging you guys to do the same. I'm here volunteering, and there's a bunch of volunteers and campaigners working here. Can you guys raise your hands? Awesome. If you guys are interested in donating some time, some money, feel free to talk to us. We'd love to tell you guys some ways you can go about that. I just learned the other day, one door knock is the equivalent of $240 donation money. So definitely want to encourage you guys to talk to us after this. And now I have the honor of introducing Navy vet, Heidi Day.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Heidi Day. I am a Navy veteran, and I am the Yang Gang envoy because we have cool titles like that in the Yang campaign. I like to joke that I was Yang, which is the verb we use, by a mistargeted Facebook ad. I'm a South Dakotan, and they were aiming for Iowa, and they hit me. So after watching this ad, I did what any rational person would do, and I put some giant decals, Yang 2020 decals on my Jeep, and I headed for Iowa. So this was the most important election of our lifetime, guys. Donald Trump is not afraid of what he's seeing right now. Donald Trump is actually really excited by who we've put him up against so far. He's raising money. He's, doing his Donald Trump thing. He's not worried. But there is one candidate that he does not talk about. One candidate that he does not talk about. And he told us a year ago, or he told his supporters a year ago, when Democrats started entering the race. He told them at a rally, he said, the only thing that I am afraid of is some total unknown entering the race. Andrew Yang. February 3rd, caucus. I need you all at your caucus location and caucusing for Andrew Yang, because Andrew Yang beats Donald Trump. Now, I would like to introduce our first Freedom Dividend recipient, Kyle Christensen.
Thank you. I'm Kyle Christensen. I'm from Iowa Falls, and I'm the Freedom Dividend recipient here in Iowa. I got it for my mom, and I'm going to tell you that little story here. Mom became ill in August of 2016, and this was just a few short months after my dad's passing to glioblastoma. After some mystery and many weeks, we found out her illness was also a cancer, multiple myeloma. I knew immediately that her battle was going to be my own, and I've been with her through every appointment, every procedure, every emergency room visit, and every surgery. She's in remission now. She'll need a hip replacement soon, and she'll also need to get on the kidney transplant list, but I'm going to be evaluated to see if I can just give her one of mine. It was determined that Mom needed a stem cell transplant, so we had a long day of tests in Iowa City, and during those tests, she got a phone call from her job and she was fired. It was also her birthday. So as a result, I began selling personal items to make ends meet, because we really weren't even sure if she had insurance at that point. Mom was not prepared for any of this, as most Americans are not. Too many of us are overworked, underpaid, underinsured, underappreciated by the companies we work for, and undervalued by our own government. We don't have the time or the money to prepare for any emergency, let alone a life-threatening emergency. I kept working, I kept trying, and I was able to get some small degree of traction even before I got the freedom dividend. But now with the freedom dividend, we have been able to recover quicker and breathe a little easier. Mom, like so many, was living with just the minimum Social Security income. Her money would come in and out on the same day, but usually leaving her in the red. Now she has this little extra $1,000 a month, essentially doubling her income. She no longer worries about her top priority, making her house payment, and all the big critical bills are mostly current. This has trickled onto me. As Mom is no longer financially tethered to me, I've been able to reinvest into my work and my hobbies again. This could be anyone's story. Take out our names and our problems and substitute your own. The biggest thing is the weight lifted off our shoulders. The last thing a person with cancer needs is stress, anxiety, or depression. We have this cushion. There's hope. With just one of us receiving the freedom dividend, we've been able to turn things around for both of us. I can't imagine if everyone in my small town of Iowa Falls got it. The cash that would flow through the small businesses and the opportunities that would create. I look forward to the day where all my friends, family, and all of you feel that relief and hope too. Andrew has a bold and brave new vision for this country, and I will not stop working until he is our president, so that my reality and my mom's reality can be everyone's reality. Thank you. And now, Mr. Alvarez.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, in Ames, Iowa, how are we doing this morning? All right. I'm very excited to be here. We were at Drake University, my alma mater, last night. We had a crowd of over 700 people, and I always love coming to visit the people in Ames because when it comes to us Bulldogs, you know, whenever we win, people from Iowa and Iowa State just go, "Oh, how nice for you." I'm like, hey, we're a real university. Come on, man. But I'm very excited to introduce an individual today to you who is a former state senator, a former House representative, and the former executive director of the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. And just reading off this man's resume, I'm getting exhausted, so I don't know how he did all of it. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big, warm Iowa welcome to Ralph Rosenberg.
By people who spoke before me. And gangers, can you guys give them a hand, all three of them? I'm humbled and honored to see all of you guys, you folks again. You are really impressive. And you're also making me really enthused and optimistic about the future. Andrew Yang is a problem solver and a nonprofit leader who understands what is necessary to bring this country into the next century. So to give you an idea of nonprofit, we're in one. The Octagon's a nonprofit artist. Across the street's a nonprofit historian. Down the block's a nonprofit KHOY radio station. Down the block is a nonprofit youth and shelter services. Down the block is our nonprofit government library. So when Andrew Yang talks about nonprofit, these are the things that he's talking about. And after seeing people across the country struggle to meet ends meet, as he traveled to create jobs with his venture, Andrew, he knew he had to do something to bring about a better future for all Americans. Just like all of you are here to bring about a better future. And your enthusiasm this is written down admirable. I think it's inspiring for us. I wish a lot of my baby boomer friends were here to see all you folks. This will be my 10th caucus, and I ask for your continued involvement because you're the future, and I think that's what Andrew Yang represents. And on a personal level, my 27 and 30-year-old sons support Andrew. He's a model for your values, your vision, and willingness to work to replace our current president. And for over a year, Andrew Yang has honored your values. He's been running on a platform to give a 21st century solution to 21st century problems, and has been laser focused on bringing humanity back into politics. Please join me.
So some of you might have seen this slide deck behind me being like, that's different. It is different. You should know that I've been stepping throughout the state for quite some time, and this is the first time I've ever used slides. Now I'm using slides in part as a response to... Was that blocking it? So I'm using the slides for a number of reasons. One, I like it. But two, this is something that I've wanted to do in a variety of formats. And I've been told over and over again, hey, when you're on the debate stage, like people don't see the actual substance of the arguments because you're kind of compressed into like a 60-second time crunch. And I've heard that and I said, they're right. I would love nothing more than to actually be able to have some time and information to make the data more publicly available and digestible. So that's what this is. You should know that you're all here for Andrew Yang's version of a Netflix special, except instead of Netflix, it's going to be the internet. Also going to make a very special announcement. I'm going to be endorsed in about 2 hours by Dave Chappelle. Dave is going to be headlining a couple of shows to benefit the campaign in South Carolina on January 29th and January 30th. So super indebted to Dave. Can't wait to help make this case to the country that we can do better for ourselves and our kids than we're doing right now. So what is the new way forward? How many of you have seen me speak in some context before? Many of you have not. Excellent. How many of you are here because you saw a TV advertisement? That would be exciting. Good, because we spent a lot of money on those ads. So most people don't know me that well, so I like to talk about what brought me to running for president. I was certainly not someone who ever thought I would run for president. I grew up the son of immigrants in this country. My parents told me, get good grades, get a good job, so I tried to do that. I started a business that flopped, but I kept with it. I became the head of an education company that grew to become #1 in the US, was bought by a public company in 2009. And 2009 was a very tough time in so much of the country where the financial crisis had done a number on communities everywhere. And I thought I had some insight as to why our economy had tanked. It was in large part because so many of the people I'd gone to college and law school with had gone straight to Wall Street and helped create mortgage-backed securities and financial derivatives and things that tanked the economy. So I thought that was a train wreck. How many of you all work in nonprofits? How many of you all volunteer for a nonprofit? You should raise your hand to that second one. That was pretty much like, are you a nice person sort of thing. And it's like, yes, I too am nice. So I went to my wife and said, hey, I'd like to start a nonprofit that's going to train entrepreneurs and create thousands of jobs around the country. And that's what I did for the last 7 years. So that's me with President Obama. My wife got to meet the president too, so my in-laws were very excited about me that week. We helped create several thousand jobs throughout the Midwest and the South primarily, in cities like Cleveland, St. Louis, Detroit, Birmingham, Baltimore, many places I'd never been before. And during this time, I saw that unfortunately the water level was going down, not up, in many communities. And I also saw firsthand the gulf between different parts of the country, where if you flew between St. Louis and San Francisco or Michigan and Manhattan, you feel like you were crossing dimensions and decades, and even ways of life, not just going a few time zones. But I was still stunned when Donald Trump became our president in 2016. You all remember that night well. How did you react when he won?
I was not happy.
Shock, tears. Someone said at another event, bourbon. Yeah, it was a shock to me too. It was a giant red flag that tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as our president. That's not business as usual. But even if you were sad or dismayed, we all have family members and friends and neighbors who celebrated his victory. And I know that's true here in Iowa because Donald Trump won Iowa by more than 8 points, despite this being a very purple state. So if you were to turn on cable news and ask why did Donald Trump win that night, why would you think that he won? What are the reasons that we've been presented?
He's a meme.
They tell us we're all racist.
Russia, racism, not a politician, Hillary Clinton, fear,
Bad campaign.
emails, electoral college, FBI, Facebook, media, all sort of mixed together. But I'm a numbers guy. I went looking through the numbers for an answer, and I found it. And I'm going to present it to you right now. All right, so first I want to give us a bit of a backdrop as to what our economy looks like. I'm going to show you all the most common jobs in the US economy just by category. So they are office and administrative work, makes sense, retail and sales, food service and food preparation, truck driving and transportation, and manufacturing. So these 5 job categories comprise almost half of all American jobs. Now, what do these jobs have in common, among other things? And if you've been keeping up with me in the campaign, you know the big themes of the campaign is that technology is transforming our way of life. So what effect is technology having on these jobs, the most common in our country? Yeah, they're getting automated away progressively. So we have some fun animations that illustrate some of these things that you've all seen and worked with and are very familiar with. This one I resent because I'm really bad at it. It always takes me like an extra 3 or 4 seconds to find the barcode. It's like, oh my gosh, where's the person when you need them? This is a robot pizza printer. It can produce pizzas just the same and delicious every single time, more quickly and inexpensively. A robot truck you've all heard of. A robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania with no human intervention 2 weeks ago. Why butter? I have no idea. And then this is manufacturing lines. So these are all things that we've seen in some measure. Now, what are the numbers around these trends? If you look at the impact on our workforce of the automation of the most common jobs in our economy, it is going to hit about 2.5 million jobs annually, which is several times the rate of any previous change that has come before. The White House estimated that 80% or more of the jobs that make $20 an hour or less are at least potentially subject to automation over this period of time. So this is the greatest transformation in our economy, in our history, what experts are calling the 4th Industrial Revolution. How many of you have heard the words 4th Industrial Revolution before from a politician? This was the first time, right? And I'm barely a politician, Iowa. I'm an entrepreneur who was getting credit for creating thousands of jobs, and I realized that my work was like pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom, and that the water was rushing out much more than it was being replenished. That water rushing out helped get Donald Trump elected, and now it's going to do more and more. So I talked about the robot trucks a little bit. Most people do not realize that trucking is the most common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million truck drivers in this country, average age 49, 94% men. So if my friends in California are successful in getting robot trucks on the roads, what is that going to mean for the 3.5 million truckers or the 7 million Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners around the country that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal? How many of you have been to Iowa 80 in Davenport? Yeah, they've got a very reasonably priced buffet. They say that 5,000 people stop there every day. How many people will stop there if the trucks no longer have drivers? You can think about our highway system as a circulatory system, and the trucks are like blood cells. They're carrying cargo, yes, but they're also carrying economic vitality. because the drivers get out every single day and shower and eat and sleep and live. Almost 10% of the jobs in the state of Nebraska support truckers. What will happen to those jobs in Nebraska when the trucks no longer need to stop in Nebraska? So this is the impact that's coming down the pike. How many of you noticed stores closing around where you live here in Ames? And why are those stores closing? Amazon. Amazon soaking up $20 billion in business every single year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? Zero. That is your math, Ames. 20 billion out, 30% of your stores and malls closed for good, you get zero back. This map that's up there, all those pins are major department stores that are set to close. How many of you have been to a ghost mall that has lost its anchor stores? How many of you would go back to that mall? Those malls get spookier and more eerie as they empty out. They go from having a lot of positive value to actually being sources of blight very, very quickly. We're doing that to 30% of the country's malls, and if you can imagine what those properties will look like in the years to come, that is what's coming, and we are going to get zero back in return. The most common job in the economy is retail clerk. The average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $12 an hour. What is her next job going to be when the store or mall closes? No one is sure. So these are the big changes that we can see. This one we can see around us right now. One of the examples I use for artificial intelligence is when you all call the customer service line of a big company and you get the software or bot on the other side. I'm sure you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, human, representative, and just keep saying that word over and over again until you get someone on the line, right? Raise your hand if that's what you do. Oh yeah, I do that too. That software is miserable. As soon as you hear it, you're like, please let this company still employ a human being. I'm gonna find that human being right now. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is gonna sound like this. Hey Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, peppy. You might not even know it's software. That is what artificial intelligence will actually mean in our lives. Because you don't even need artificial general intelligence to have software that can take the job of that call center worker. You just need a very good decision tree and thousands of voice prompts and software that can detect changes in our tones of voice so that they know when we're getting annoyed, and then they can switch gears. AI is getting smarter and stronger all the time. This is an oversimplification. This is just showing the exponential growth of Moore's law, but this is not that far off as to what AI is going to be capable of. The quote on the slide is, AI is the new electricity, which is a quote from a Stanford professor. That's what they're doing right now. And how many people do you know who get smarter like that? Maybe your 12-month-old. Because they can actually start doing things in a particular day. But most of us do not actually ramp up in that direction. So what will the effect of artificial intelligence be on various jobs? I was talking about the most common jobs in our economy, which are retail clerks and call center workers and truck drivers. But this is going to touch many jobs that require high levels of education, because many of these jobs are actually very rules-based, and you can program machines and software to tell you what to do. Radiologists already cannot compete with artificial intelligence software that can see shades of gray on a film that the human eye cannot, and can reference millions of films rather than hundreds or thousands. This is a picture of a robot pharmacist. It turns out being a pharmacist involves a lot of trying to monitor drug interactions and data, and then figuring out what to dispense. I was an attorney for 5 months, which is long enough to know that you can automate away a lot of that job. And that's half a joke, but it's very real. Software can edit contracts more cheaply and effectively and accurately than any human lawyer can, if you were looking at a volume of documents. So this is a problem that's going to affect everyone pretty quickly. And it's already transforming certain industries like finance and insurance, who are replacing workers right now. I spoke to a group of 70 CEOs in New York City, and I asked them, how many of you are looking at replacing your back office clerical workers with artificial intelligence and software. Guess how many hands went up out of 70? All 70. The fact is you could fire whoever didn't have their hand up because their incentives are all around improving their bottom line. So if someone comes to them and says, hey, you can get rid of some of your workers and replace them with software, you have to do that or you'll be fired. That is the system that we have built. Our system is built around capital efficiency for these publicly traded companies. It is not built around our well-being. It is not built around our quality of life. That's why we feel the way we do. Now back to the original question, why the heck did Donald Trump win Iowa by 8 or more points? How did he win Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, all places that have traditionally been battleground or swing states? You had this entire series of explanations from the news networks, but I went through the numbers, and the numbers tell a very clear story. The reason why Donald Trump's our president today is that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs over the last number of years. And where were those jobs? Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. I have been to the towns that have lost their manufacturing jobs here in Iowa, and after the plant closed, the shopping center closed, and then people left, and then the school shrank, and then that town has never recovered. I have seen the same thing play out in towns in Missouri, Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, Michigan. How many of you studied economics in college? Maybe you're studying now. Some of you might be students. So according to classical economic theory, what would happen to these 4 million workers who lost their manufacturing jobs? What's their next move, according to our textbook?
Retrain.
They get retrained, moved, and find new jobs. Maybe they became coders. Sense where I'm going with this. So if you actually try and find what happened to those manufacturing workers, it turns out that many of them, even most of them, left the workforce. This curve is the labor force participation rate in the United States. And you can see around the time that manufacturing employment went off a cliff, so did workforce participation. It turns out that almost half the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs never worked again. And that shows up in the numbers. So how did these workers survive? They filed for disability. The black line is the disability rate, which went up and up at the same time that we were laying off all these manufacturing workers. The gray curve is the ratio of employed to working age population, which obviously went down in the exact opposite direction. So again, we blast away 4 million manufacturing jobs in the swing states. Half of them, almost half, do not work again. They filed for disability. You then see surges in certain other numbers, like you see a spike here in the proportion of American children who are born to single moms. Right now it's about 40% in the US. You can see that also started to rise around this time. Studies have shown that when people lose their jobs, they get married at lower rates. Almost 2/3 of the manufacturing workers were men. So if you can see this playing out, as men lost their jobs, people get married at lower rates, but they still occasionally have children. You then also saw a surge in suicides and drug and deaths of despair, to the point where now America's life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years in a row. So that is the blue line. If you see these other lines, they're all other developed countries. So as you can see, which direction are the other lines going? Down. That's normal in a developed country. In a developed country, ordinarily you're getting richer, stronger, healthier, and people are not killing themselves at higher rates. In the United States of America, we have had record levels of suicides and drug overdoses that are so unprecedented that America's overall life expectancy has now declined for the last 3 years in a row. You know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? Great Depression is a great guess. It's even earlier than that. It's the Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic that killed millions. That is the last time it happened in America, and it's happening now. This is not what the cable news networks are presenting as the reason why Donald Trump won, but I'm a numbers guy, and I find the numbers much more convincing than the working backwards rationale that the talking heads are using. They're trying to back into the numbers. Why not just use the numbers? You also saw surges in anxiety, depression, mental health problems, prescription drugs. We have a mental health crisis in this country that is also unprecedented. So to review, you have record high levels of corporate profits and GDP, but you also have record high levels of anxiety, depression, financial insecurity, dislocated workers, suicides and drug overdoses. So if your corporate profits are going up and your life expectancy is going down, which do you listen to? We know which one Washington, D.C. is listening to. They can't see past the dollar signs. They're not paying attention to people and life expectancy. Washington, D.C. today is the richest city in our country. What do they produce? This is no one knows. And yet business is awfully good. So these are some of the disconnects that have led to Donald Trump being our president. The disconnects and the problems are actually real. Donald Trump's our president today because he had a very simple message. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. Remember that? It's been a long 3 years, Ames, I know. But we're going to end it together in a little less than 3 weeks. Hillary's response did not go over well because the problems are real. They do exist. We have to acknowledge their depth and severity and reality, but then we need actual solutions that will move the country forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back. Ames, you know we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of the 21st century. We have to evolve in the way we see ourselves and our work and our value. I'm the ideal candidate for that job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Math is an acronym. What does it stand for? Make America think harder. Make America think harder, that's right. That's your job in 20 short days. So how are we going to actually move the country forward? If you're here today, at some point you heard that someone's running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. Yes, and I do. And that's what we have to do to actually start moving these things in the right direction. So what I'm saying we have to do is distribute the gains from the Amazons and Googles and the AI companies of the world to you all, to your families, to your communities. Build a trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. $1,000 a month in your hands would be a game changer for millions of families right here in the state. Particularly because in the trickle-up economy, when the money is in your hands, where will it go? How would you spend it? How much of it would stay right here in Iowa? Most of it, not all of it. You might get your own Netflix password. But most of it would go to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and local nonprofits, and religious organizations, and to arts, and creativity, and culture, and entrepreneurship. And I know how necessary this is in part because of my own family. My wife is at home with our 2 boys every day, one of whom is autistic. How much is her work included in our economic measures? 0. That gets a 0. And it's not just her and Kyle and all the caregivers who are taking care of ailing loved ones, or all of the volunteers and activists in our communities who are doing it out of love, or the coaches and mentors who are trying to make people stronger. How much do they all get valued at? 0 or near 0. Again and again. 98% of artists, 0 or near 0. Local journalists, more and more. We put 2,000 local newspapers out of business over the last number of months because all their revenue went up to the internet. You know what doesn't function as well without local news? Democracy. How the heck can you vote on what's going on in your community if you don't get any information about it? These are the things that we claim to value more highly than anything else. our families, our communities, our democracy, but we're allowing them to get zeroed out one by one by one. And that's what the freedom dividend changes. The freedom dividend makes the case to our fellow Americans that we all have intrinsic value as people, as citizens, as human beings. We have to disentangle this confusion that economic value and human value are the same things, because they are not. What do you say? Is that true? Yeah. That is the message that we have to take in 20 days. This $1,000 a month lays a foundation that makes us all more able to adapt in unprecedented times of change, which is right now. And then we need to measure our economy by things that would actually tell us how we are doing. Even the inventor of GDP said 100 years ago, this is a terrible measurement of national well-being, we should never use it as that. And here we are 100 years later, riding it off a cliff. Robot trucks will be great for both corporate profits and GDP. They'll be terrible for many, many Americans. So instead of GDP, we should be measuring our well-being through our own well-being. Health and life expectancy, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, childhood success rates, clean air and clean water, how our kids are doing. These are the real measurements of our country. I will modernize GDP to include these things, and I will present them to you all each year at the State of the Union in a PowerPoint deck. I'll be the first president to use a PowerPoint deck. So now you see why I'm using a PowerPoint deck right now. See, it all came together. To close, I'm not running for president because I dreamt about being president as a kid. Those were not the conversations in my household. Raise your hand if you're a parent like me and Evelyn. If you're a parent, at some point over the last number of years, you had this sinking feeling that we are leaving our kids a future that is less secure, less stable, less bright than the lives that we have led. And we think about that in terms of climate change, but it's not just climate change. If you were born in the US in the 1940s, there was a 93% chance that you were going to be better off than your parents were. That's the American dream. That's what we all want to live. That's what brought my family here. If you were born in the 1990s in this country, which I can sense as many of you, you are down to a 50-50 shot, and that is declining fast. That is why we parents feel the way we do. Because it's true. We are leaving them a future that is less stable and less secure than the lives that we have led. I'm not running for president because I wanted to be president. I'm running for president because, like so many of you, I'm a parent and a patriot. I have seen the future that lies ahead for our kids. They deserve better, and I want to give them better.
Yeah.
But in this, you all are the most powerful voice in our country. It doesn't feel like that. Many of you are just living your lives, deciding to see the presidential candidates as we come through. But I did the math. Do you know how many Californians each of you is worth?
40,000.
1,000. 1,000 Californians each. That's right. That's the power each of you have. It's the power to actually transform the course of history. How many of us are here in this room today? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are about 1,800 people in this room. It's the biggest room anyone's ever seen. There are about 140 people in this room. But 140 would still be almost 4 football stadiums full of Californians worth of power. You all have the power to do something that the rest of the country only dreams of. The rest of our fellow Americans look up and they see our government as a series of pipes that are just clogged full of money, clogged full of lobbyist cash, and they despair they can do nothing about it. They are generally right. They can do nothing about it. Only you can do something about it. It's up to you to flush the pipes clean and retake our government so it starts working for us and not the corporate interests in 20 short days. Thank you very much, Ames. now we have some questions, which we can do the old-fashioned way. Conrad here will run the mic around.
This on? Hello? Hello, Andrew. I'm a local, born and raised Iowan. I'm a local jiu-jitsu instructor and entrepreneur. The reason I'm here today is for my students at No Coast Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu down in Des Moines. Many of them, I'm lucky enough to have nearly 100 students that call me Coach Jordan under the age of 13, and many of those have mental health problems, learning disabilities and things of that such. What I would do if you're able to become president and implement the Freedom Dividend is I would want to build something that would provide an opportunity for some of those who may struggle to find jobs after they get out of college. You know, many people are told they have to go to college, they accumulate all of this student loan debt, and then they're not even able to find a job in the workforce. So I would want to build something that would give them the opportunity to do that. Obviously, $12,000 a year isn't enough to pay a bunch of people a working wage. How do you think I could best utilize my Freedom Dividend to make that goal happen?
First, thank you. I absolutely love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And it's not a surprise that many of the kids that you're working with are special needs or have some atypicality, because that's the new normal in our country. It's what I say about our son Christopher. This is the new normal. And I can sense instinctively that what you're doing is tremendous for them and their self-esteem and their development, because jiu-jitsu is awesome. To your question, first, I couldn't agree more that college is not for everyone. We are overprescribing college, and we made it 2.5 times more expensive since I went. Has it gotten 2.5 times better in that time? No, just 2.5 times more expensive. But kids still feel like they don't have a choice but to go. So we need to invest in non-college paths. The first and biggest one is to invest in technical apprenticeships and trade schools. Only 6% of American high school students go to technical programs right now at their high school. In Germany, that's 59%. So think of that gulf. That's one major non-college path. I love your entrepreneurial zeal. It seems like you started this school yourself. Is that right?
It's not. I'm the general manager.
You're the general manager?
My best friend's selling it.
So if you want to expand it, one of the things that's going to make it so much easier for you to draw in people who want to do that kind of work and help other kids and then and grow it is the fact that you'll have this $1,000 a month yourself, which will give you a degree of security. But then the people you're talking with will also have $1,000 a month, so that if they want to do the kind of work you're proposing, then they can have a foundation to give it a try for a particular period without feeling like you have to break the bank to pay them on day one. And then when you go to parents and say, hey, your kid would really benefit from this, if there are 2 parents in that household and there's another $24,000 a year coming to that household, do you think they'll be more likely to pay the jiu-jitsu instructor if they've got an extra couple $1,000s a month coming in? And it's not just the jiu-jitsu instructor, it's the tutor, it's the special needs, the speech pathologist, it's the coach, it's everything that makes our community stronger and healthier. Right now, our economy is pulling us towards things that are serving the machine, and we have to make the machine serve us. If we had the machine serving us, then I have a feeling that many more people would be both starting and joining jiu-jitsu schools, because I think it's one of those things that makes a lot of people stronger, healthier every day.
Thank you.
Andrew, I'm going to give you a political question, but
Sure.
if that's all right.
Oh, I like it.
As you rise political attention, you're going to be the recipient of even more fake news and criticism from the president. So leave with us an encouraging message and a thought, how are you going to deal with fake news and the negative, made-up criticisms of you? How are you going to be Trump?
Thanks for the question. What's the #1 criteria for Democrats about the nominee? Beat Donald Trump. That's right. Surveys have consistently shown that I'm drawing a higher level of disaffected Trump voters than anyone else in the field. One survey said that 10% of Trump voters would support me in the general over Trump. Another survey said that 18% of college Republicans would choose me over Trump in the general. And you know who's figured this out? Donald Trump. There is only one candidate in the field that he has not touched online, and you're looking at it. And he hasn't touched me because, one, he knows it's a losing battle because a lot of his supporters actually like me. And number two, I'm better at the internet than he is. Go down this line is that I'm peeling off disaffected Trump voters and independents and libertarians, and a survey showed that I now have I'm among the least disappointing nominees in the field for Democrats. I was literally jumping for joy when I saw the survey. It was literally like almost 90% of Democrats would be like, I would be okay with Yang as a nominee. So if you put those two pieces together, you wind up with the strongest candidate to beat Donald Trump. Particularly because what are his strongest attack lines against his opponents? You're a creature of Washington, you're corrupt, you're like a lifetime politician, you know, crooked Hillary, like the rest of it. None of that stuff works on me. Well, the joke about like the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Like, I'm kind of like this mirror image of him, and I can make him look utterly ridiculous on the debate stage. I cannot wait to get him.
Hi, I'm actually here from an organization called Respectability, and thank you for completing a questionnaire that we put out to you and all the other candidates. My question is, there are dozens of government programs to help people with disabilities get jobs, but most of them do not coordinate or collaborate to create success. How will you get them to break down silos so people with disabilities can have jobs and independence just like everyone else?
Thank you for your work and your advocacy. I feel very, very passionately about this as the father of an autistic child and as a person. We need to do much more to help people with disabilities access opportunities and jobs, but I'm going to make a bigger argument. We cannot put ourselves in a bucket where we're saying, hey, everyone can contribute at the marketplace, because one, there are some people that legitimately cannot. Like, there are, nonverbal autistic children who are going to grow up to become nonverbal adults. And two, it should not matter. Like, we all have value no matter what. This is one thing that drives me crazy about the arguments about women in business. Is like, what you always hear is that like, oh, companies with women in leadership roles make more money. And so let's like unpack that and be like, so the purpose of treating women well is to make more money. And if for some reason you didn't make more money by treating women well, then you would not. So this is the argument I would make too for people with disability. It's like, do we need to put much more in the way of resources to help people actually see the abilities of people who have different capacities and then have them enjoy that kind of independence and work? 100% yes. But does that actually, does that need to be the standard that people are at in order to live a good, fulfilling, happy life? No. It's like we should be investing in everyone's happiness and fulfillment, regardless of whether or not they can slot into a corporate role.
Thank you. So you mentioned in your topics, so your campaigns, you mentioned we're actually entering the fourth industrial revolution. It's a new economy, new society to build up. Right. So the question is, how can we make sure that U.S. continue to lead in this new century, the new economy, and also make sure that the 60 million people in rural regions like Iowa can participate in this, in this new movement.
So this is something I'm very, very concerned about, is the United States going to keep pace with China in artificial intelligence? There's a joke that people told in AI. It goes like this. How far behind the US is China in artificial intelligence? And the answer was 12 hours, because they would wake up and see what we did the previous day. That was a joke. But now the concern is that they're actually poised to leapfrog us because we invented this thing called machine learning, which now develops algorithms that get smarter based upon having access to more data. You know who has more data than anybody? China. And China has also invested more in computing resources and infrastructure than anyone else, where they have islands of server farms as far as the eye can see, like something right out of the Matrix. And I have sat with our leading technologists in the United States, and they said, look, we will invest $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion in computing infrastructure, but we can't invest $10 or $15 billion the way the Chinese are. And so we're concerned we're not going to keep pace. So I'm going to ask you this question. Proposal number one is that no need to worry because the American scientists will come up with a new breakthrough and we will then somehow leapfrog the Chinese again. Or number two, the person with more data and more computing infrastructure is going to win. Raise your hand if you think it's going to be number one. Number two. Yeah, me too. So what I said to the folks in Silicon Valley, I said, all right, let's say I'm the president, which thanks to you all I will be in not that long. Here is the deal I will make with you. We will put up billions of dollars of public resources to match the Chinese computing infrastructure and make it available to you to make sure we maintain our global lead in AI. And in return, you will have someone from the government in the room to make sure you do not do something disastrous. Does that seem like a reasonable trade? And then they were like, yes, it does. It's like, good. And they're actually concerned about doing something disastrous because they know if you do AI research and you go off the rails, it can be very, very devastating. Some of them know that. One of them actually said to me that the government should give us guardrails because right now our incentives are all to go as fast as possible, and eventually one of us is going to do something we regret. If the CEO of a tech company says that to you, you kind of should listen, am I right? So this is what we need to do to maintain competitiveness in AI. The other major technology realm that we need to try and match the Chinese in is 5G. So they have subsidized their 5G equipment to the highest levels, and we do not have an analogous offering in that space. The other competitors against Huawei and their 5G are Samsung and then a couple of European firms. So this is going to be a massive race, an investment that we have to make, and right now we're lagging behind. Those are my two main priorities, and I believe I'm the ideal commander-in-chief to make sure we keep pace with the Chinese in the next number of years.
So I know that a lot of candidates running for the Democrats or even Republicans, say Donald Trump right now, they like to show us everything that they're doing right, all of the good things. Here's how I can do everything that's right, I have no failures. They always like to show the best things possible. If you are elected president, would you show us the truth about these things? Would you not always just show us a perfect facade that things aren't great? Would you tell us when there are problems? Would you tell us the things that aren't going well?
I love this question so much. It speaks to the substance of our politics. You have my word that I will be delighted to tell you about the problems and how crummy it is. Because that's just the way my mind works. I think you can sense it from the data. I mean, some of this data is very dark, right? It's very depressing. Most politicians are told, do not say dark and depressing things. The problem is that our reality is becoming dark and depressing. How many of you saw the images from Australia about the wildfire? Was that not straight up out of some kind of nightmarish science fiction movie? Killed 1 billion animals. Can you imagine the carbon levels that went into the atmosphere? Here's my proof that I will tell it how it is. A few debates ago, I was the person who staked out the new position on climate change, which is that it's worse than you think and it's already here, and we just need to get on with the business of trying to protect ourselves against it. You know how many of you saw that debate? And then now the other candidates are saying the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, there's no preventing climate change, it's here. So I promise you, as your president, I will tell it like it is, warts and all. That's actually just the way I naturally operate. Also, I snack too much, and what else? What are my other vices?
Thanks for being here, Andrew. Appreciate it. I am paid by my employer to make sure that data stays safe, to encrypt it, teach them how to encrypt it. One of the things that's really frustrating is a number of politicians on both sides of the aisle have been saying we need to figure out how to encrypt data and give the keys to the good guys. Any cryptographer will tell you that's not possible. You only have two options. It's either fully encrypted or it's backdoor. My question to you is, if you were running a Department of Justice and you said, here's what we're going to do when we have these types of issues come up, are you somebody who thinks that we should try to find a middle ground, or are you 100% privacy oriented at all times?
I believe that it would depend upon the nature of the information. I think there's some information that we should be committed to saying, like, this should be encrypted and off limits in most any case. And then there's other information. I actually naturally hew towards transparency for some things. And so it depends upon the nature of the info. It's a very big, complicated government and system. There are going to be some things that genuinely should be off limits from public eyes. If it's not clearly in that bucket, then I would like to try and move things towards a greater degree of public transparency. I think right now one of the reasons why we feel the way we feel about our government is that you feel like there are all of these things that are happening in these buildings and in these boxes that we're not privy to. I'm going to give one basic example of something that this is not to your question, so it's kind of far afield, but this is just my thinking on it. I'm not someone who would ever say you should run government like a business, because they're two different things. Anyone who says that's pretty dumb, honestly. Different organizations, different leadership skills, different processes. But if you were a business and you got hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue from hundreds of millions of people on a single day, you'd probably be pretty happy about that day. That's tax day. Why is tax day such a miserable bore for all of us? I would turn it into revenue day. I would make it a national holiday. I would bring families to celebrate at the White House another awesome year. And then you'd get a thank you message from Oprah and The Rock and Tom Hanks saying thank you for fueling our society for another great year. And you get to elect where 1% of your tax money went, so that you have a sense of like engagement with where the money went. And then you get a thank you message from that agency too, like the U.S. Forest Service. There'll be some rangers being like, thank you. And they're like, thank you so much. Would that make you feel a little bit better about the government?
Yes.
Yeah. Just getting a thank you would actually be a step. And so to the extent that government can share a piece of information, then you'd actually start to feel a little bit better and healthier. There's one massive treasure trove of data that we need to make available to academics and data scientists and people who can actually comb through it and find really awesome correlations. Someone told me that it's like right now being caged in a way that is not accessible to academics. But the government accrues a lot of information that if we allowed scientists to go through, you could actually find very, very interesting lessons. I would commit to anything that's like that could actually be a public resource, we should make publicly available and try and renew the trust between government and the people. Oh, I love questions. Who's got it? You got it.
Hi, my name's George Carr. You mean the absolute world to me. I did my thesis in the ethics of artificial intelligence. And what I focused on was fully autonomous weapons. So those are weapons where there is no human in the loop. A machine decides who gets killed for. Now the amazing thing about this is America has not signed the pledge to ban this, and a lot of countries have. Elon Musk supports it, tech entrepreneurs support it, but America hasn't signed it. And so what I'd like to know is, why do you think the incentives in international relations